Welcome to Audit the Audit, where we sort out the who and what and the right and wrong of police interactions. This episode covers public photography, anti-mask laws, and terrorist threats, and comes to us from 10 Point Program's channel. Be sure to check out the description below and give them the credit that they deserve. Before we dive into the episode, I want to tell you about a great way to earn extra cash and gift cards from brands like Amazon, Walmart, and Target through today's sponsor, Point Club. Being an independent journalist has its financial ups and downs, but Point Club can help fill in the budget when times are tough. You can watch videos, play games, take surveys, or shop online to earn rewards. And if you click on my link in the description, you'll get a free $5 when you take your first survey. Thanks again to Point Club for sponsoring this video. On January 23rd, 2020, YouTuber 10 Point Program 703 conducted a First Amendment audit on a public sidewalk in Prince William County, Virginia. After spending approximately 2 hours taking photos of various county-owned vehicles and property, 10 Point Program is contacted by Officer Walsh of the Prince William County Police Department.
How you doing, sir? Do you have ID on you, sir? How you doing? Do you have ID on you? How you doing, sir? Do you have ID on you? Sir, do you have ID on you?
Please don't impede my way of walking, please.
No, sir. You're taking pictures of everybody. I need to see some ID.
All right. So you're impeding my way of walking.
Do you have ID on you, sir?
You're impeding my way of walking.
I understand that.
Sir.
I need to see your ID, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, I need to see your ID. Sir, I need to see your ID.
I'm not giving any ID, sir.
You're taking pictures of county vehicles. I need to see your ID, sir.
Okay. So what is illegal about being a photographer?
No. You're being a photographer. But I don't know I don't know what the purposes of your pictures of county vehicles are for.
So
you were at the courthouse yesterday taking photos as well, right?
What is the purpose?
Can I see your ID, sir?
I don't have an ID on me, sir.
You have nothing on you?
You're impeding my way. I would like to go.
You can't right now.
And what is the reason why I can't go?
I just need to talk to you real quick because you're taking pictures of county complex.
I don't want to talk anymore.
Then you need to stand right here while make sure that you're not wanted for something. How about that? Stand right here for me. Please don't move. Sir, stay right here for me. Okay.
Notice that Officer Walsh states that the reason for contact is because of 10 Point's photography. While it has been clearly established that photographing government buildings is not a crime, it can still be considered suspicious activity in certain circumstances and warrant an investigation by an officer. It is a common misconception that officers must be able to articulate a specific crime they suspect is being committed in order to detain a citizen. The Terry v. Ohio case, which has served as the pinnacle doctrine for police interactions and reasonable suspicion, dictates that an officer must be able to articulate specific and objective facts which lead the officer to suspect that some criminal activity is occurring or has occurred. Under the Terry doctrine, courts consider the totality of circumstances involved in any police interaction to determine whether an officer's detention was reasonable. I have made a video which explains reasonable suspicion in more detail, which I will link in the info card above. It is difficult to say whether 10 Point's actions satisfied the reasonable suspicion requirements of the Terry doctrine, and courts generally consider interactions involving illegal detentions on a case-by-case basis.
What am I being detained for, sir?
You're taking pictures of county vehicles and county buildings.
Okay. So is that a crime?
Right now, you need to identify yourself to the police. If we're stopping to talk to you, yes, you need to identify yourself to me.
Is that a crime?
You need to identify yourself to me.
So
that's going to be a crime.
Let me get your ID and where you live at, and then
I'm not going to tell you where I live.
Then why should I tell you where I live?
Because I am stopping to talk to you. I need to see your ID.
So you just stop and ID
You're
people?
taking photos of government buildings and government property. Okay. So I need to see your ID.
All right. And that's a crime?
I need to see your ID to figure out who you are.
Alrighty.
And plus, you're covering your face in a public place.
Virginia Code 18.2-422 prohibits the wearing of masks in certain places, which includes any public place. You may be thinking, what about the motorcycle officer on the scene? And 10 Point made the same observation. But the law excludes masks worn by those who are engaged in professions where wearing protective masks are deemed necessary for the physical safety of the wearer. It is likely that most courts would agree that the motorcycle officer's mask would fall under this exception. The history of anti-mask laws stretches back to the mid-1800s, where in 1845 the state of New York legislated against appearing, quote, disguised and armed. But most anti-mask laws were enacted in response to the activities of the Ku Klux Klan, and much of the relevant case law has rendered mixed results. For example, in the 1999 Indiana District Court case of American Knights of the Ku Klux Klan v. City of Goshen, members of the Klan argued that removal of their mask would subject them to harassment and thus hinder their ability to advocate for their cause. The court ruled in favor of the Klan and struck down the City of Goshen's anti-mask law. But 5 years later, the Second Circuit Court held that harassment of Klan members was irrelevant because the Constitution guarantees only the right to speak, not the conditions under which one speaks, in the case of Church of the American Knights of the KKK v. Carrick. In most anti-mask cases involving the KKK, courts have held that protecting citizens from the Klan's intimidation was a more compelling state interest than preserving the identity of Klan members. Anti-mask cases not involving the KKK have had a more favorable response from the courts, but most anti-mask laws are careful to use neutral language that avoids targeting specific groups explicitly. Approximately 15 states and countless counties and municipalities have anti-mask laws on the books, many of which have not been challenged in court. Given the recent higher court trend of upholding anti-mask laws, it is likely that Virginia Code 18.2-422 would be ruled constitutional if challenged. But whether or not 10 Point is actually in violation of the code is questionable. Nonetheless, the code does provide the officers with reasonable suspicion to detain and identify 10 Point, and after a lengthy banter between 10 Point and Officer Walsh, eventually Officer Gardner arrives on the scene and expresses his concerns.
I'm Officer Gardner, please. So you understand our concern today?
I don't understand your concern,
so
sir.
What were you? I missed the beginning of it, so I don't want to say third party. What was your purpose for being out here today?
I'm just taking pictures.
Okay. What are you taking pictures of?
I'm just taking pictures.
Okay. You're just out taking pictures?
Correct.
Is there for any reason?
For my own use.
For your own use?
Yes.
Okay. So we talked to our supervisor. They told you about the mask, so that's why you can understand our concern, right? When people are out taking pictures of government buildings or cruisers, you can understand as law enforcement why we get concerned about that, right?
No.
You don't see why?
You don't see any concern in that?
No, I don't, sir.
Okay. Well, I think most people would probably agree that it's concerning if people are coming up and taking pictures, especially this day and age. And
what do you mean by this day and age?
This day and age was like there's wars and stuff going on, and people plotting and Boston Marathon bombings and stuff like that. So
the post-9/11 era ushered in a new dawn of civil vigilance, and terrorism dominated the airways of the 24-hour news cycle of which many Americans have become accustomed to. The dominating syndicates of mass media have built a contextual narrative that suggests that terrorism is a prevalent threat to American citizens, and that all Americans should be aware of possible threats of terrorism and suspicious activity. Since the September 11th attacks, there have been around 75 documented terrorist attacks on American soil, resulting in approximately 253 deaths. Those attacks include the 2016 Orlando Pulse nightclub shooting and the recent El Paso Walmart attack. Those two instances alone make up 72 of the total deaths associated with domestic terrorism. Averaging those numbers over the 19-year span between now and 2001 results in about 4 attacks per year and 13 deaths. In a 2012 study, the CDC found that an average of 135 deaths per year can be attributed to non-venomous animals. Statistically speaking, farm animals pose a greater threat to Americans than domestic terrorists. Although these statistics do not shed light on the spectrum of circumstances surrounding domestic terrorism or non-venomous animal attacks, the point is to highlight the effects of mass paranoia and gaslighting tactics that mainstream media outlets have consistently used to garner clicks and views throughout the years. Domestic terrorism is a serious concern, and remaining watchful for potential terrorist activity is a legitimate task undertaken by all members of law enforcement. But the fear tactics of American media outlets have in some instances eclipsed the liberty of law-abiding citizens to a concerning degree, and Americans must ask themselves where they draw the line between the freedoms protected under the Fourth Amendment and the potential threat of an attack. After Officer Gardner fails to reason with 10 Point, the commanding officer, Sergeant Hill, arrives on the scene and reiterates the concerns of the other officers.
I'm their supervisor. Okay?
How you doing today, sir?
So, what is your intent and purpose of being on county property taking pictures today?
I'm a photographer, and
Okay.
the last thing I knew, this is public property,
It
correct?
is public property,
Okay.
but let me just put it in perspective of the people that are calling in because they were concerned. They have a person that is masked. Yes, it is cold. They are taking pictures of the building. They're not sure if you're being a photographer or if you're being a person that is doing a setting up for either an attack or reconnaissance for whatever malfeasance that certain individuals might do.
Am I allowed to go?
No, you're under
So-
investigation right now, trying to
For
find
what
out why you're
crime?
doing
For what crime, sir?
your suspicious activity.
Okay, so is
Okay.
suspicious activity a crime? And Mr. Hill, is suspicious activity
Currently,
a crime?
you're detained because you're wearing a mask in public and refusing to identify yourself. Because right now, the charge was the wearing the mask in public, and you're rising to the level of disorderly conduct and obstruction of justice. We don't want to do that. We want you to be able to
Disorderly
walk off
conduct,
and take
sir.
your. Yes, sir.
Have I described this? I've been talking to you in a very calm manner.
You
have
have been.
Have I raised my voice at you, sir?
No, but you've now
Have I-
causing a disturbance within the public because everybody's watching what you're doing here.
That has
You're
not-
also obstructing justice because we're not able to do our investigation. Those are the two things.
Eventually, 10 Point offers his name to the officers, but refuses to surrender his date of birth or any other supplementary information, and is subsequently arrested and taken to jail. 10 Point was charged with wearing a mask in public, which is a Class 6 felony, and obstruction of justice, and spent 5 hours in jail before being released with no bond. 10 Point posted an update video a few days after the interaction, stating that he intends to acquire an attorney to fight the charges against him, and has submitted a FOIA request for the body cam footage of 5 of the officers involved in the interaction. 10 Point's court date is set for the 24th of February. Overall, the officers of the Prince William County Police Department get a C because although they may have been within their authority to stop and detain 10 Point, their unprofessional tactics and accusatory candor devolved this interaction into a senseless and unnecessary arrest. While public photography of government buildings may grant officers the ability to stop and investigate a civilian, it does next to nothing in the way of preventing a potential attack. Arresting an individual for taking photos renders no evidence of an attack, and the behavior of these officers only serves to further the frustrated philosophies of a potential attacker. A friendly and unassuming approach to this encounter could have produced a dramatically more productive outcome to this interaction, and an overzealous enforcement of Virginia's anti-mask law only leaves law-abiding citizens to suffer the consequences. The Prince William officers would do well to integrate a layer of community policing into their everyday interactions with civilians. 10 Point Program also gets a C because although he was exercising his First Amendment right to public photography, he was lawfully required to present identification for for violating the anti-mask law. Whether or not 10 Point was in violation of the anti-mask law is for the presiding court to decide, but the officers were within their authority to detain and identify him based on their interpretation of the law. 10 Point's refusal to cooperate was based on a misunderstanding of the law, and that misunderstanding ultimately led to his arrest. It is important to consider all of the applicable laws at the federal, state, county, and municipal level before carrying out a First Amendment audit, and 10 Point's lack of due diligence temporarily cost him his freedom. It will be interesting to see the outcome of 10 Point's case, so be sure to subscribe to his channel to stay updated. Let us know if there is an interaction or legal topic you would like us to discuss in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more police interaction content.